Hello, everyone, and happy Filipino American History Month. This is Cheryl Sampson Ramirez, co founder of the Pilipinx in Wellness podcast. We bring to you the seventh episode of our fifth season titled Hilot. Our featured guests are Liza Bustillo, Kai Delgado-Pfeifer, and Earlando Engkanto. Co hosts in this episode are Sheena Katz and Mark King. This will be the first of a two-part series that we will culminate 2025 with as our team embarks on our first winter break. We will then return to you all in 2026 with the second episode of our Hilot series. I hope that you enjoy this wonderful episode that we bring to you.
Hello, everybody. Happy Filipino American History Month. Welcome to the seventh episode of our fifth season of the Pilipinx Wellness podcast. I'm your co host, Sheena Katz. For this episode's audio description, currently I am wearing a blue denim shirt. My hair is down, and I'm currently streaming from Boracay, Philippines. So, co hosted with me today is Mark King.
Hello and happy Filipino American History Month, everybody. My name is Mark King, and for this episode's audio description, I'm wearing a gray shirt with a animation, I guess, of or graphic of an eagle. I am wearing a hat with Mabuhay vibes on as a patch on it. In the background, it's pretty much white, and that is my description. So, following our last episode, Rest and Community Care, with restorative yoga teachers Liza Bustillo and Nirel Salazar, we are delighted to bring you a two-part series on Hilot, starting with Bay Area mystika, Liza Bustillo, cultural organizer Kai Delgado-Pfeifer, and Hilot Binabaylan Earlando Engkanto. Now, as mentioned in previous episodes, all views discussed are for informational and educational purposes only. It's not meant to be medical advice, nor does it constitute therapy or professional advice. Always consult with your healthcare practitioner, especially before starting any exercise or new health program, or a qualified mental health professional for your particular condition. And without further ado, I would like to welcome to our podcast Liza, Kai, and Earlando. Welcome to the podcast, y'all.
Great. Thank you for having us.
Hi, y'all. It's Lisa.
Yeah, thank you for having us.
Right on, right on. We typically like to open our episodes with knowing where our guests are from. Can each of you please inform our community where are both sides of your family from and where you are currently streaming at the moment?
Hi, y'all. Liza or Lisa again. And thank you for having me as one of the guests on the show. Currently, I am streaming from Vallejo, California in the Bay Area. And my mother's side is actually from Bohol, so in the lower Visayas of the Philippines. And my father's side is from Bukidnon, Mindanao, so northern part of the lower part of the islands, but in definitely like the lower parts of the Philippines. So
Cool. My name is Kai Delgado-Pfeifer. My pronouns are they, them, theirs. I'm calling in right now from Brooklyn, New York, which are the ancestral lands of the Lenape people. On my mom's side, I am Filipino and Chinese. We come from Iloilo, Philippines. And then on my father's side, I'm fourth generation European American, coming from Ireland, Germany, Lithuania. So quite a mixture of ancestors. Also, like my audio description is that I'm wearing a gray t-shirt, I have a gold chain on, wearing a green snapback, some black over-the-ear headphones, and my background is white. And I'm wearing glasses.
Hi, everyone. My name is Earlando Engkanto. I like they, them pronouns. I currently am a settler in San Diego, which is Kumeyaay Land territory. And my family is from Imus, Cavite in the Philippines. I am Filipino and Chinese descent, but my family is mainly Filipino, and that's how I was brought up. Um, the other description for me as well is I am wearing a dark green jacket with a black um, tank top, necklace, and I have AirPods on.
Thank you, everyone. Before we move on, do you all know each other? The three of you? Have you ever worked together?
Yeah,
Yes,
I'm
I
yeah.
was like, who goes first?
Yeah.
But yeah, no, I've met both of them. So yeah,
Yeah.
Okay.
I've only like in healing spaces with like Hilot. I've been in a mentoring class that Earlando was in, but I think Kai and I were just like in community when they were in the Bay Area and at events and stuff.
Yeah.
So
Well,
do you
that's very cool. Go ahead.
go ahead?
Sorry.
Well, I was gonna ask. So you guys all have Bay Area ties?
Yeah. Guess so. I don't know. I never met you, Earl. I know you're from SoCal. At least that's how I know you. And so we've never met in person, but share similar community.
Yeah, I will echo the Bay Area roots here. It seems like all of us have kind of like been or like interacted with similar people in the Bay Area, and then we just kind of like dispersed out. But yeah, Kai, I only know through the virtual world. Really a huge fan, and it's nice to share the space with you too.
Wow, right on. Bay Area
Technology
in
is
the house.
amazing. I love it. Well, we can't wait to dive into our two-part series on Hilot after talking with Kai Virgil, Mayor Apostle, last season in his episode, Cultural Perspectives on Wellness Rooted in Indigenous Healing Modalities Throughout the Philippines. Check out our podcast platforms if you haven't heard it yet. It's a great introduction to this one. But to set things off, let's start off with defining for our audience, what is Hilot? So for this one, we'll start with Kai, then Earlando, then followed by Liza.
Ooh, I feel like that's a big one to answer first. But I guess I'll just like maybe share like my own take, and I feel like together our definitions might just like build a more collective understanding of it, which I feel like is part of what Hilot is. But for me, Hilot is like a set of healing practices that have a very vast range. Um, but they're all rooted in like a spiritual relationship to the land, and to the body. And there are many modalities through which one could choose to work, whether that be like as someone who works with plant knowledge or is more of a spiritual medium, someone who works more with like amulets, and charging things and creating protection. There are people who focus on prayer, just on their own, like prayer as like a modality. Um, and then I find there's also folks who are like midwives, bone setters, and then like more of what we know as like the body work, which I think Hilot today is more associated with. But I think it's all of those things. But at the core of it is like more of this like spiritual kind of perspective of healing, that all modalities that do with the physical, it runs through that. So I think that's how I would describe Hilot.
It's fascinating.
Yeah, yeah. This is Orlando speaking. Yeah, I would echo everything Kai said, and yeah, it is the cultural medicine of the Philippines is how I like to put it too, because a lot of different cultures, a lot of different countries have their own specific type of cultural medicine, right? Like how in India they have Ayurvedic medicine, in the Philippines we have Hilot, right? Or we have this where Hilot is just a small aspect of that. There's the physical, which is the body work, like Kai was talking about. There's the like albalario, the person that deals with the herbs, and then there's that babaylan, that spiritual elder, that leader that leads the community through spiritual matters and sicknesses that are known to be strange, peculiar, mysterious, right? But I think in short, I would gloss over it as the Philippines indigenous cultural medicine, and how we treat our community based on the things that surround us, the herbs, the community, the energy. Um, and yeah.
Lisa back on the mic. Yeah, it's hard being last for this question because they have definitely covered a big portion of what Hilot is. And I would say that, the focus definitely spiritually rooted, even with dealing with things that have physically manifested, whether that's health problems, right? Inconveniences, confusion, right? Like tapping into what Orlando was talking about, the mysterious, unseen. And I feel like essentially we're, as Hilot practitioners, Manghihilot, Hilot Binabaylan, trying to bring our folks back into a balance, depending on each person, because it is very specific, even with the like description of what it is. Like even with a person who may be experiencing similar things, it's always treated specifically to that person. So yeah, I would say it's very personal as well.
Wow. And on that note, let's dig in a little bit deeper since you mentioned it was personal. I'm sure it's true for all of you. So, how did you all get into Hilot? What were some of the key events in your lives that set you all in this, individual healing journey that led you to this practice and here? It's a deep question. So, for this one, let's start with Orlando, followed by Lisa and Kai.
Great. So, yeah, always going deep. I love it. I'm a Scorpio. I wouldn't have it any other way. So, so for my, I guess the way that you would paint my kind of origin story is that it was really having a detachment, um, and a colonial mind when it comes to the way that I interacted with nature. I thought that that was a really huge starting point for me. As a child, I didn't really. I was I was afraid of nature. I would disrespect it, right? To the animals, the plants, the trees, things like that. I would, without going too deep, I would be very disrespectful and yeah, and then I started realizing that there was a detachment, right? Um, in the Philippines, we believe that there's nature spirits, right? And to tabi-tabi po, or like to respect the elements around us that we don't see. I started to find that in my own life when I became a vegetarian. And then that's what kind of, I think, slowly opened my world up to the holistic health world. Um, and like specifically when it comes to Heal, it started off as in my body. So um, it's very hard for me to talk because I used to have a stutter. And so the only way for me to express myself was through like poetry, art, dance, things like that. And I believe that our first storytellers were the dancers, the shamans, the medicine people. So that's how I connect that thread, because art, theater, dance, and all that was what kind of opened me up spiritually. Now, fast forward into when I actually started studying. I studied holistic health in San Francisco State. Started off with traditional Chinese medicine, learned more about qi, and cultivating my qi, and then through that, it started to I started to be more curious about my own culture's medicine, and that's when I fell into Hilot. Started talking to my family and things like that, and um, yeah, now I find myself here, really practicing this through grief. When my dad passed, that's when I started to get a calling. So, yeah,
Thank you for sharing that with us.
of course.
For me, I would say it's hard to pinpoint. I think as I look back, it just always felt like my younger self, the child back then was just always so tapped in that it was scary, right? I felt now I can definitely understand that it's a gift and how the kind of psychic connection or even the calling to hold space as an empath um, was kind of always present. And it was almost, I feel like, pushed even further when I feel like I went through my dark night of the soul when I had a very close family member who was like my mother figure while my mom was at work, had passed when I just almost started high school. And I feel like, teen angst, all the things you think you're an adult, but you're really not. And all these complicated experiences mixed together with a death in the family and being so sensitive to these things that are not present, right? To the naked eye, it felt like I was really repressing it for most of my life that, later as I started growing up, um, I forgot, like, what the first instant was, but I just remember, like, movies, Twitches was really popping when I was, like, in middle or in elementary school, which was a movie about, twin sister witches who had powers, Sabrina the Teenage Witch, like, all those things that really drew my interest in a playful way because I do feel like as a practitioner, my thing is, like, remembering play and inner child healing. But then there was a boom in, like, spirituality kind of opening up through, like, crystals, Reiki, and more of the mainstream media that allowed me to feel safe exploring those things to actually train my gifts that now, after, coming to realization, like, I wanna study my culture and finding Hilot and finding Hilot elders, it was kind of like a thing that just always existed, but now that I'm here where I'm at, I can look back and understand like, "Oh, that's why, that's why." But another last thing that I'll include is I remember seeing my mother who I feel like she has the gift, but she just, you know, hasn't really maybe like accepted it. But I remember when my brother who used to play football would get injuries, and she would get her I don't know if y'all know that green bottle of that funky oil, the effervescent oil, and she would be like pouring that on her hand and rubbing his like muscles. And I remember asking her like, "Mom, why are you hurting Kuya?" And she'd be like, "I have to push the pain out." And to me in my mind now, I'm like, "Oh, that's Hilot." So yeah.
Wow. What about you, Kai?
Damn, I feel like that that last sentence you said, like, calculates, like, kind of what I was thinking of, like, Hilot is to push the pain out. And I think for me, like, when I think about my Hilot journey, it has a lot to do with, like, ancestral pain. I come from, like, I think it's very common for Filipino Americans, and I mixed race, so, like, it's kind of 2 sides. Like on the Filipino side, lots of like intergenerational illness, particularly like diabetes, cancer, hypertension. We all know these things like gallstones, everyone has gout, and a lot of these things come back to our diet, but also like at the core of it, like our separation from the land, um, and through the exploitation and colonization that we've had to endure. So on that side, like, and then on my father's side, also a similar thing, like there's like many generations of like alcoholism and mental health issues. And this I come to realize was also from this like core disembodiment from the land and the spirit of the land, whether from the Philippines or from Ireland or Germany, at some point this relationship was broken. And so actually much of the way I came to Hilot was through like trying to heal these things that I didn't want to perpetuate in my life. And so I began studying agriculture in the Philippines with folks in Mindanao, with the Lumad. And so I learned a lot about herbal medicine and got to witness a lot of the different forms of ritual that have to do with farming and agriculture. And so I think I learned very on that like Hilot and healing, like it all starts with your core relationship to the land and whether you're in right relationship. And so from there, I think the plants started to like reveal themselves to me. And they like, like the certain plants would speak to me. And I kept on studying farming in the US, as like doing food justice work and urban farming, and facilitation around agriculture. And ultimately, all of that just like led me to Hilot eventually. And then I went to the Philippines a few times to study. Um, but yeah, I think all of those things kind of led me to Hilot. And it's still like revealing to me, like, why am I doing this? Um, and yeah, I think there's layers to it. And I'm like, oh, like I'm really focused on plants, but I feel like more of this calling to mediumship now. But the plants are like helping me and supporting me to do that safely. So, which I feel like Gila is about, is like ritual and doing it safely so we can heal our lineage.
Wow, these three very different journeys are incredible. Thank you for sharing that with us. So, taking a step back, Babaylans, Manghihilots, Albularyos, Mananambals, these are just to name a few of the many different modalities of indigenous healing spread throughout the Philippines. And as we mentioned earlier, we got a glimpse of that in the Virgil Mayor Apostles episode last season. We learned in this episode that his Ablot practice was passed down from his Lola, because healing practices are often embodied and passed down intergenerationally, right? So, curious, did any of you discover healers within your own families as well? And if so, please tell us more about that.
Yeah, so as I said in kind of my last share, I know the gift was in my mother. And something that's also really common for um immigrants who have had to leave their land, like Kai was touching on, there's kind of a mix of these things, from disembodiment from the land or even just shame of the culture that they have when they come to America to assimilate and, fit expectations. I would notice my mother would deny or not want to associate with some things because of, her religion and Catholicism kind of deeming the stuff with Hilot or some of these things that are um, like divination based kind of as evil. And so she doesn't, at least when I ask, like, have any recollection of anyone in the family line. But I'm like, I know someone's there. But when I ask my father, he's a little more he's less hesitant and has a little bit less resistance, and he actually told me that his grandfather, which would be my great-grandfather, was a Manghihilot in the family. Um, and so I have not met this great-grandfather in the physical realm, but I've been really connecting, like, ancestrally in the ethers with these figures who probably learned from, someone else down the line. But yeah, I'm kind of the first generation back to be bringing it forth again. So those are the only um like individuals that I can pinpoint in my mind right now.
For now.
Right. The story will continue.
Right. What about you, Orlando?
So, to paint a full picture, it's on my dad's side, and my mom married down, right? I love you, dad. But she did. And my dad was coming from the streets, very like canto boy style man, you know? And so, with that type of personality, he would carry like charms and like on things and things that like protected him, right? So, like here in the States, he became more Catholic, and I do remember little things that he would have for like protection. Um, and then on my dad's dad was also there it is again. My dad's dad, he was the one that was known to do magic tricks at parties. And magic tricks means that he was able to like make things come out of his hands, like water come out of his hands or move things from across the room. So I know that there's an element of like magic and mystery on my dad's side of the family. And then my cousins have always been telling me, like, oh, you remind me of your Lolo Domingo. You remind me of your Lolo Domingo. And then when my dad passed, there was even more of that. Things started to come up, and family members were like, "You remind me of this," and it's like, so I believe that it's definitely on my dad's side.
Yeah, what about you, Kai?
Like, it feels complicated. Sometimes I'm like, where does this come from? Um, but I think it comes from my Lola a bit. Um, Almost similar, like my a lot of like things that I'm really interested in kind of skip my mom, and my mom will always say like, "You got that from your Lola." Like particularly like, when it comes to food, but even like my relationship to prayer and discipline, because my Lola was like very Catholic, but she was the one who like made rosaries for like everyone. And so she would sit there, like particularly as she was passing away, like making rosaries a lot. And so I think this discipline of like orasyon and like prayer definitely comes from her. But she also like had this like, I don't know if I think like only the family knew about it, like this kind of interest in the occult. Because she had this like book from like this 80s, like early age, like new age stuff, where it's like combining like the 12 Western zodiac signs with the 12 Chinese. And you could go, it's like it was like encyclopedia size. And this book survived my house that burned down shortly after my Lola's death. Like it was one of the very few things that survived. And me and my best friend, were in her apartment, like, this winter, like, looking at this book, and we were just, like, freaking out because it was, like, so on point, like, every single detail, and so my Lola was really into this, and I love astrology, so, like, my mom doesn't really care for it, but I know everything about astrology, and so I think I got that from her. And then also, like, my Lola would go back to the Philippines often. And there was a time in particular when my mom was like getting divorced from my dad, and she was going through a hard time. And my Lola would go see this babaylan in the forest of like Panay. But my mom didn't know what to call it. She didn't know the word for this type of person. It was like a Manghihilot or someone who did tawas or something like that. But my Lola went to this person very specifically every time she went back, and he did the divination, and she was like, "Yeah, like you need to go like get your daughter, like go protect her." And lo and behold, like my mom really needed that. Um and so yeah, my Lola definitely believed in that stuff, but I feel like I'm the generation that like gets to kind of learn about the Catholic mysticism and how it's gotten expressed, and like not see that as a disadvantage, but rather like this is one way into it, and then now I get to like decolonize that further. But it still has that same core, I think, of like being guided by spirit and like some higher power for sure.
That's really awesome. So a lot of you got, all of you have some sort of, I guess, what am I saying? Some sort of line from the family lineage into, or at least a knowledge of Hilot. And a lot of times, we think about Hilot, that's something that's passed down from generation to generation. I guess the point I'm making is it's a commentary on how how Hilot is not being actively passed on. We're having to find out through other ways, through other experiences, and then find our way back into Hilot. Um, which brings me to the next question: how long have you guys been as a client or practitioner in the Hilot practice? And then the other question, along with that, tell us a little bit about the demographics of the clients that seek out your help, and if you have any kind of memorable stories of any of those clients that you've helped out with.
Yeah, so, for me, it really began at a church, surprisingly. Kai brought up, Catholicism or Christianity, and I think a lot of Filipinos in diaspora, we find ourselves in a church, like, it's just so common, right? So I was at a church as a child, And that's when one of my uncles, who's not related, Philippines, they all call each other uncle and auntie. One of my uncles in the church, he was teaching us, or he was teaching all the kids karate. But he was also known as the Manghihilots of the church. So if people got injured, he would always say, "Oh, if you can hurt someone, you should be able to heal them," right? So he knew, like, when somebody got hurt, how to heal them. So there would always be a line, with all of the elders, like, in pain in the morning with their pandesal, and then Uncle Norby will just, and it'd be like, so it just looked so violent, right? And circling back to that amazing quote, like, "Hilot is to push the pain out." I mean, I can talk about that for days, that may be phasing out in this new generation of healers, but I'm gonna pause there. Um, yes, so for me, as a person who received Hilot, it was from my uncle as a kid, and then as an adult, it was another uncle that was a family Manghihilot, so he treated our family. And he's also an acupuncturist, so that's someone that I still continue to see. Um, and then he was someone that I studied under, and then so that was just something that started to kind of fall into my practice. In regards to the demographics of people that I treat, it's definitely diaspora. It's only here, right, in the United States. But I love to work with queer folks, with Filipinos, and generally, yeah, that's my clientele that is growing. And the last question was, do I have any memorable stories? Yeah, there was one client, a Filipina client of mine, and after I was doing Hilot on her, more of the physical manipulation, she started to have these, like, energetic releases, is what I like to call it. So there's different ways that chi, prana, ginhawa can leave our body. And one of them is like through laughter, right? Or through crying, or those are the kind of common things. But for her, it was really interesting because I was finishing, and then her limbs were just like moving, like, and it was like uncontrollable. And she was like, "Erlando, like, what's happening? Like I can't stop it, right?" And it's interesting because I was pushing acupressure points as well to unlock, like, clogged, stagnant things that cause pain, right? Those knots, or those things that we heal up to push it out, because once it goes out, it has to go somewhere. So for her, it was just like, it was actually very beautiful. Like, it kind of freaked me out at first because it was one of my first clients in that way. And she was lying there, she's like, "What's happening? What's happening?" And I just had to really hold the space and be like, "This is just what happens when we, like, unlock, these points, and the energy has to flow out, right?" Because it didn't feel threatening, it didn't feel scary, it didn't feel heavy, it felt light and airy, and that's exactly what was happening. So it was just her, like, moving for, like, 20 minutes.
Wow.
So
Wow.
that was probably one of the ones that stood out.
That's crazy. So the energy was actually just leaving through the limbs.
Mhm, mhm.
Where does the energy go? Because energy just where does that go?
Yeah, you don't create it, right? So, yeah, it just flows. So we try to, like, make it flow more freely.
Mm, gotcha. Okay. Awesome. How
Mhm.
about for you, Kai, or for you, Lisa?
Um, I think so. Have I? When was it? Like, I started getting body work a lot. And like, I would say that my journey with Hilot in this way, like, kind of began in the like pandemic times. But my early training started with I think I don't know if we all share this common teacher, Apu Adman, from Hilot Academy of Binabaylan. But actually it's funny because I was on the plane to the Philippines to study with him for 10 days, like days before lockdown. And like I would got to Taiwan and I was gonna get there and then I got sent back to America. So because of this, then he focused with us in 2020 on distance healing. where we focused really primarily on Tawas, which is like our ancestral divination arts. And it really like set for me that like this, I think for me is like one of my deepest callings as a Hilot practitioner is because I'm so so sensitive, like, and I'm trained in different forms of body work now, including Hilot, but I actually very barely practice body work. Most people come to me for tawas, and for like cleansing rituals that I also learned through Apu and other traditions as well. So yeah, a lot of people come to me with like more like spiritual concerns or like relational stagnation or just like this general sense of feeling like really disconnected from like their truth and what they should be doing. Um and I know now that I'm like looking back on it, many people who have come to me like have had abortions, or they've had like a significant loss in the family. So actually like oftentimes to do with like grief, and like the loss of something pretty significant. And in my Tawas practice, I would say I work a lot with like symbologies of like animals and different plants. And sometimes like I can connect with like ancestors through this medium, but oftentimes it's like beings of the earth, like earthly beings of nature that are really trying to like communicate with us. And so I found like I'm actually really proud of this. Like, once people come back to me, they very rarely need to come back.
Hmm.
Which I, because with my Tawas practice, like I very much like give people a ritual to do. And like if that doesn't solve things, then we can like work together more. But a lot of times people have like been like so they move so much like through just Tawas alone. Like one person, she got a divorce and she like these really significant things that I was like, wow, like once you like work with your ancestors and your team through this medium and can identify them, like you're pretty much can help yourself. Um yeah, and that's what I really love about Hilot is like it really centers like each person's own ability to like heal themselves with the assistance of someone that they seek out to support them.
So you're more of energetic as opposed to body. Is that what I'm hearing?
Yeah, I like doing body work, but I think I need to figure out still in my journey how to like cultivate enough protection around my sensitivities so that when I touch someone, I can do it safely, for my own energy, but I still haven't figured it out. So right now, yeah, I do work primarily with like energetic and like I would say nature spirits in a sense. Like I work closely with earthly energies.
And then when people come to you, they're coming to you for a specific they're feeling something off energetically pertain to a specific situation,
Yeah, oftentimes.
and then
Or they're
you're
coming with a very specific situation and they're like, I don't know what to do. Like, I need help. Like, I don't know what kind of help I need, but I know I need it. And this is the situation. And we just move with that and be like, okay, let's see like what wants to be spoken through like the more the spiritual side.
I love that.
Like
So
literally like consulting spirit.
right. So then when you are able to address that particular situation, your goal and what you seem to experience for yourself is that you're not getting people coming back for the same issue.
Yeah, because I think that's one of the things about Hilot. I think even and maybe you can like articulate this as well, Lisa and Earl. Like, I think one of the things that Apu taught us is like our job is for people not to become dependent on us. Like our job is to like make sure that people can like come to us to see what the issues are very clearly, and then they can get like kind of recommendations of what to do, but until that person like takes agency of their own circumstances to change, then like it's nothing but like a codependent relationship almost, like
Right.
for them to keep coming back to you.
Right.
Unless it's like chronic pain or something and these things that you generally need a therapist. But often if it's like this like relational, like energetic field, People, yeah, need to often take care of things
So
on their own.
in the sorry, I don't mean to cut you off. In the mechanics of it all, what you're saying is the thing can start to understand the mechanics, and if another issue of the same energy comes up, they can apply the same mechanics.
Yeah. Or they could come back and like maybe there's different, you do tawas again, and sometimes there's like different energies or layers to something that you need to like identify.
Love it.
Um, yeah.
And how about for your demographics and any memorable stories?
Hi. So I feel like also when I think of just being like a client too of Hilot, kind of drawing into the stories I've already kind of shared about the background, how I got into it. In my house, Hilot was just a kind of a word, yes, for healing, but more focus of like the body work. After like a long day, like my mom would ask for it. I remember like stepping on my brother's back, my older brother's back, when he was just like bored babysitting me and wanted to put me to use. And yeah, and I feel like I don't really remember asking for it because, a kid, you're not really, like, feeling all of that yet, but it was kind of a thing we just gave each other when we needed it to support our, I guess, like, mental health or just, like, how we're feeling. So I feel like, ever since I was a kid, like, I was doing hilot, like, by little hands on all my because I was the youngest of my family. I'm bunso, which is the baby of the family, so I was put to use, and I feel like that was as early as I could remember. And practicing, I'd probably say like, yeah, like pandemic, because I feel like Kai has been on screen when I first started this, and Orlando is like more towards like the ending of like when I started mentoring. So it's kind of crazy like being here with y'all. And so I feel like the people that come to see me, like they just range, even though it hasn't been that much time. I feel like I really went hard in the paint with the few years I've really been doing this, that even though it hasn't been that much time, I have a lot of experience with people. Like I've had like a teenage girl who wanted to receive from me, but I told her like, since you're a minor, you have to either have a parent with you or parent permission. And so that was like crazy when that happened because she was like 16 but Filipino and curious. So I bring in a lot of people who are curious about the culture and like reflect that younger version of me that was like, whoa, I've never seen this, I want to know, I want to experience. And then elders, after moving to Vallejo from where I used to live, Vallejo is actually very mixed, but there's a lot of Filipinos here, and so I've actually served a great deal of, like, elders who were just like, "Oh, I remember this when I was young." So, like, kind of on the other side of that, like, spectrum of people who are young and curious, but then the elders who are like, "Oh my gosh, this is still here," and it feels sometimes like it feels my imposter syndrome, right? Like, "Oh, no." But then I feel like experiencing and giving them my all and, like, just honing in, has led to great things. And I feel like even everything in between, like the people who like are Filipino, who are not, but also really intrigued by something that is less about, oh, physical problem, let's rub your muscles and that's it. Like people who really are trying to understand like a deeper meaning of like maybe why things aren't going right or why there's things happening to their body, or even, yes, with the divination or the energetics of like, why is it that even when physically I'm so healthy and all these things are, planned with my self care, like, why am I still feeling funky? And then with a reading or like with a clearing ritual, there's like a very loud message from their team, their ancestors. And so I feel like it's hard to put like a demographic because, it's like I said, a lot of experiences, but the thing I can universally tie in is like people who are like curious or have a touch of like that otherworldly things that they can't really explain or maybe scared. But like I ain't scared. So it's like I really move fully in this, like even in the depths and the dark of it, because I can see that for you, but I can hold that space because I love that shit. So a crazy story that I could like tie like to a memory of just everything I'm explaining. One of the elders I work with out here, she was, she's from the Philippines. She like has her family and another generation that's out here. But she was saying how like I want to do that reading you're talking about, which is Tawas. and she was trying to figure out like why she has this pain or like why things have been happening, like, with family stuff, financials. And so we did a reading, and with the symbolism or just any of my senses that are like, tuning in, like I listen to what is being spoken. And I remember I was saying like, yeah, did you happen to, like step somewhere that wasn't technically your land, or like you weren't allowed there? And she like almost starts crying, and she's like, how did you know that? Like that happened so long ago. That was like so specific. And she starts like, this 80-year-old woman just starts like spewing out all these things in the moment. And she's like, I can tell this is real because, you don't know me. I've never told you this story. And we kind of figured like a way to move through the emotions and like get her grounded and centered to do a ritual. And then she comes back like I think the next month, and she's like, "You know what's crazy? I went to the store, and after, the ritual you told me, I told her to put like an offering outside so, the nature spirits can take it and like forgive her for this thing she did when she was like really younger." She said she went to the store and came back to her car with her daughter, and there was this random little bag with like, I think it was like a note that was like, like, have a nice day. This is just because, and it had money in it, and it had like a few $100s in it. And she was just like, it's random, yes, maybe, but I know that after the feeling she had after our ritual, and because she was talking about, like, financial stuff and stress, and the whole thing that we went through together, she was like, "I know this was because of you," because, I was kind of telling her, like, "Yeah, trust your intuition with this. Trust the things that, you were told as a young kid to, like, forget about, and, like, it'll just go away." Um and I feel like it's those moments where it's like it could seem like it's a crazy coincidence or a silly little thing, but those are synchronicities that are happening because of what we're choosing to do, what we're re-indigenizing, what we're re-recognizing that, once was part of like our ancestors' lives, like being in ritual, seeing like land as sacred, and like understanding like like what Kai said, your relationship with it, and like where are some areas that you have to come with certain energies and respect to, and like 80 years old, like remembering this story that happened to her way back that got brought up through Tawas was like one of the craziest things for me. And she said ever since that happened, like she's been living very like energetically differently. Like she said something spiritually was like almost resolved for her. It's always a journey, but like it's like when someone who has received Hilo and has received these things from the Philippines and relays that message to like someone like me, like I'm 28 years old, little old me. It's like I hold that with just so much like honor to be able to like bring this resolve that she was talking about. So yeah.
That's awesome. Yeah, and that's quite a thing, being able to hold space for an 80-year-old person, uh, and experience some transformation that you were being able to. That's got to be pretty rewarding for sure, for sure. Kai, how about for you? What was we didn't get a memorable story. Was there a memorable story for you?
Oh, I guess I kind of started like with that. I guess I alluded to it a
Oh,
little
okay.
bit. But I did have a friend that I did a reading with, a dear friend, when I was living in Germany last year, and she was having like really like severe like issues, like um there was like an issue with some cysts and stuff like that, and that were persistent, and also just like issues with like someone she was divorcing. It was very complicated, and like all of these issues were perpetuating in her life and just like blocking her. But yeah, we did the tawas, and like there were some very clear messages, but also so much love. We could feel that like her ancestors really were there the whole time for her, like seeing her go through these things, and that they were just like waiting for her to like see them and like pray to them and feed them. And so that was like, her job. And afterward, and then she did like the things that we like recommended, like these rituals and these practices for close to 3 months. And I saw her again this past spring, and like is that was like a little over a year after she had done the ritual, and like oh, I can almost cry just thinking about this moment with her because like I'm so proud of her because she really took it so seriously that like when you do enter into like Hilot as a modality, she's not even Filipino. And she like had so much respect for our practice and like our relationship to the land and the ancestors, and she went back to those things as her core. And like not long after, like the like ex-husband finally signed the divorce papers, and like she like the persistent physical issue disappeared. Like she was like, it's been like 9 months, Kai, since that problem like reappeared. And yeah, I'm just like so proud of her, but I'm also just like, yeah, like when we do the rituals and we're like consistent in our self-care practices, like that can't that sometimes doesn't resolve everything, but in her case it did. And so she showed me that like something that seemed unmovable, like through discipline and ritual, was like quite like she could transform it. So I think that's like one of my favorite stories. And I've had similar stories like that with other very difficult situations that people were trying to transmute. Um, yeah, that was really helped them move things along.
I mean, all those stories are also very transformative. I do emotional intelligence work, and when I help people with their transformation, it's such a reward. I can relate to what you, but I think what I am actually kind of jealous about is that you guys are practitioners of something from the homeland, and it's proving to be of value to people. So being able to help people with their transformations, but also from our own roots, that's got to be super. That's got to be a super feeling.
Mm. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Yes. It's a great feeling.
Yeah.
It's an
I
awesome
It's
actually,
feeling.
nice. It feels good, but it also like
I actually had a quick question about Tawas just because I was listening to all of your different stories. I'm curious, when people come for Tawas, does there have to be an existing problem, or can you just come to realign? Does it have to solve something?
I
I'll let
would
one of
say
y'all speak
no.
first.
Okay. I
Okay.
would say no, but generally, I think when going back to the demographic question, like people tend to, at least for me, come to me because of a specific problem. Like I think there have been a few times people have just wanted to like see and understand, but it's like you don't get some deep messages, and sometimes even when they don't think they have something that's gonna come as like a question, it like comes up and like it will hit them by surprise because it's probably not a problem, but it's probably something that got swept under the rug over like generations or like maybe on a minuscule level because we're always able to evolve. So there's probably something that's like helpful to know to like step into that next potential of yourself. But generally no, not necessarily, but it's profound either way.
Gotcha. That makes sense. And I was asking because sometimes you may not even realize there's a problem, but just may feel something is off. And a lot of folks don't have the language to even ask, like, this is what hurts emotionally, physically. But can they come to you just to say, something feels off? Can you help me?
And then for
That's very cool.
for the most part, I think most people, or at least in the Filipino community, understand or have an understanding of what Hilot is. Could you, or maybe Orlando, you can speak to this, give us a brief description of what Tawas is?
Sure. Yeah. I was just thinking about this based on what Sheena was saying about I don't really know what's going on. Like if a client comes in and they're like, something's wrong, I just don't know what, right? I like to with with Dawas, with Hilot, I think there's always a way of like educating folks too, particularly here, on like what that is. So sometimes I like to weave in tarot with Dawas because then it makes it more accessible for someone, because at the end of the day, a type of medium that you use is just that. It's just a medium. The cards are the cards, the tawas is the tawas, the candle, the spoon, the paper, the oil. It's just something we use. Um, and so, yeah, it's like, it's just an energetic snapshot of what's going on. So whatever's latching itself onto, whatever's taking most of your energy, that's what's probably going to come up in the reading. Um, and so, yeah, a tawas is that. It's an energetic snapshot of what's taking on most of your energy. And when we frame it in a question or something, it kind of puts a magnifying glass to that energy, and then we get more specifics. That's how I like to explain it.
I love that. I love that.
So, when working on specifically Filipino clients, are there common themes or issues that you come across? We can start with Kai for this one.
Yeah, I think people usually come to me with like I said earlier, lots of like relational issues, or losses in the family. Um, yeah, like I don't know why. I'm like, are these like reflections of things that like maybe like I also have like a lot of personal like experience with, like really heavy types of grief. Yeah, so yeah, like divorces, abortions, deaths, um, try like miscarriages actually quite often. Um, yeah, it's like interesting. This is the first time I've really like assessed that like these are the types of like in issues that I've encountered or like themes. So whoa, and like my candle was just like flickering like mad heavy when I said that. So yeah, like I've always been like really connected to I think like processes of loss and death. Just because it's something I've like gone through a lot in my own life. And I think I'm very much one who's like cutting and like letting certain like generational patterns die within my own life. So I find that people come to me with like those things and just seeking like reorientation and not necessarily trying to stay in the grief. Like they want to acknowledge grief, but they want to like come back to like a feeling of being whole again and to find like some joy and like agency. And oftentimes like these people are also feeling like a bit out of connection again with like this with the earth. And I think people know that like I do quite a bit of farming and things around food and food as medicine. And so oftentimes like when we're going through these like really transformative like moments, like is when our bodies also need like extreme like nourishment. And so I'm able to both like do tawas with people to kind of like figure out like, okay, like which like animal guides are you not aware of that you could like literally just like start thinking about and just being like, oh, I'm aware of that type of bird now, or like I'm aware of that type of like cat, or this type of plant that keeps like showing itself to me. And like all of these things are that when we notice them, they are support, as long as we recognize them. And so I think that's like my work with the people is like I can't necessarily like get you through this grief personally. Like I actually don't consent to like holding that grief for someone. I can be there though to like help them like turn shift the perspective a bit and like widen up the lens of awareness to certain things that they could find strength from too, and then that they could also like have an awareness of spirit communicating to them, and then it's no longer through me but them in direct relationship to spirit. And oftentimes when we're going through heavy moments, like I hear this even from people who are very Catholic, like when I've like reached my end, like I just pray to God, like it's just me and God, like there's nothing like fancy about it. And I find that people come to me when they're at that point when they're like, yeah, I just need like a direct relationship. And yeah, usually coming back to the earth and to food and to plants, to animals, has like helped people restore themselves through these challenging times.
Okay, so I feel like I'm pretty balanced in the types of people that request like the physical bodywork Hilot as well as like the energetic divination energy things. And I think the first thing that kind of came to mind was definitely the physical stuff that I noticed like the older women, the titas, the aunties, like they really like really hard deep pressure. And I say that specifically because it's never the same with like the titos or the older men that comes to me. They're actually very fragile and they're very like sensitive to my pressure. And sometimes I'm just like, I think this is like a generational thing too of like all the stuff that's like weighted on, their shoulders of responsibilities, of motherhood and things of that sort that it's just interesting to me to know like that that's a common theme. Even for me, like when I'm requesting body work, I'm like, you better be like drilling your elbow in me or I'm not gonna feel any form of relief. So in a way, yes, kind of reflecting maybe things that I need as medicine to give to other people for medicine. Um, and just the types of like intense situations too. I would say they're not really like specific that I can pinpoint like in the way Kai was sharing about theirs. I think for me it's just more like people who they almost like just feel this, yeah, like this lostness or they have a grip of something that they know about their life, but they've probably tried everything and maybe they just needed this route of like holistic indigenous medicine. And I think this is really intriguing because sometimes, I'm always saying that I don't know everything. I'm always a student of Hilot, of my culture even. Um, but there's like a lot of trust and questions that people that see me, especially Filipinos, Filipinx that come to a session that sometimes it's like not even the session and it's like the conversation. Like sometimes we'll be in my studio for like 4 hours just cuz they want to talk and that's part of the healing. And sometimes we don't get that in the outside world because of work, jobs, expectations that I think are all starting to like shift as everyone in other cultures are starting to kind of become aligned back to their cultures and the roots of things. So,
That's so interesting. And speaking of the different ways of healing, I know that each of you also work with multiple healing modalities. Can you share with us a little bit more about those healing modalities that you've all been trained in and I guess sort of the cadence of that, right? So do you keep it separate? Do you integrate it into your current practice, into your current healer practice? How does that work on your end? We can start with Orlando.
Yes. So for me personally, I do integrate it. Something that I always go back to is that the cultural medicine is just that, right? It's different names for essentially the same energy that we're manipulating, that we're working with. So for me, and I might and I may get harpied for it, but I do tend to integrate it. On a subtle level. If something like Tawas I'm doing is Tawas, I'm not throwing in other elements of it. The Tarot and the Tawas is separate, but it's a way to kind of bridge the gap, right? And there's a lot of education involved, particularly sometimes too. It's like how much do we actually have to explain to a client that, oh, I'm doing something Ayurvedic to you. Now I'm doing something, Tui not related. Now I'm doing something Hilot, right? Like, I don't think it's as important. So going back to the question, I do integrate it personally. Um, my other things that that I integrate, excuse me, sorry, is my Chinese Tuina practice, which is based on acupressure points and qi. Um, and the other one is more of an Ayurvedic perspective, where I also work with Vata, Pitta, and Kapha elements. I feel like that's a really great way for me to gauge a person's constitution and then tackle the issue from multiple angles, so that we can benefit within the hour of our session. Um, yeah, I think that answers your question.
Wow. What about you, Lisa?
Yeah, I would say I kind of moved in it like, no, I cannot mix things together because, little backstory, I actually started my journey in community as a jeweler. I still do make jewelry. I'm actually wearing some pieces that I make right now, and it's still part of like my practice of just who I am. But I think now like Orlando was saying, like, it's very subtle because, right, maybe I'll put, like, a crystal underneath you that is more like something that I feel called to do to support your healing in the time that you're seeing me, not necessarily because of something, like someone else told me. Um, and I also have been working with sound healing lately. I started my journey with Reiki, but I've been trying to find more decolonized practices to actually, like, meet the truths of how it really started in Japan. And so I've kind of been like just laying low with that. But sound healing has been really catching my eye because I'm a very physical person. I'm bending wire, making jewelry, heloting people. But I feel like I've wanted to really connect with like more like frequency medicine. And so yeah, sometimes after a session, like and I can tell the person's really relaxed, I'll play some sound bowls just to like accentuate some of the relaxation they're feeling. And that can also create other forms of like certain things that their psyche gets to kind of put together and like realize, or like maybe it reminded them of something, maybe it's calling and supporting their connection with an ancestor. And so it's not like a huge, like, collab that I'll do, but yeah, it's very subtle and just kind of dependent on the person because it's not always, but sometimes the Hilot itself and the divination and the other aspects are usually enough because it's the conversation too, like, that's a big part of Hilot, it's the conversations of, like, what we're picking up from what we're doing to really, like, help you come to a conclusion of how to move forward.
Very interesting. And Kai, any other modalities that you either integrate or separate?
Yeah, I mean, I would say like more of like my one-on-one practice is like around tawas and this more like spiritual work. But the other, I would say the majority of my work with community is actually as like a educator around our healing traditions, particularly food. So I work a lot with food as medicine, and herbal plant medicine. Yeah, and I teach people about this in like larger classes, which I find really freeing because then like people were like telling stories, and I find this to be a whole healing modality on its own. Um, yeah, and then I also integrate this sometimes into like my one-on-one work and like offering consultations about like food and lifestyle changes. I'm not a nutritionist, but I do kind of did some self study of Chinese like element theory and how this works with like food energetics and seasonality of food, and how that can be like part of our reclaiming of relationship with the land. And then I would say like, I don't know if it's traditionally considered a healing modality, but I practice and I'm trained in Vipassana meditation, and have like a deep retreat practice and yeah, meditation and mindfulness and connection to the body through mindfulness is something that I integrate into all of my sessions and classes as well, because yeah, it's part of how we can ground ourselves.
Those are absolutely all healing modalities as someone who's a big into meditation. So we're curious about your family's responses to your Hilot and healing practices. We talked about this a little bit earlier with Lisa, but want to get deeper into it now. How did you explain it to your parents and your family members, about Hilot and going into it? What was their responses and reactions?
So I'll be so straight up, like they were not approving of it. They thought I was crazy. More so like and I can understand like, backstory of how that came about. I feel like my mom is like head honcho of the house because she's very passionate. So she says what's on her mind. And she's very like Taurus Aries energy of like what I'm thinking and saying and feeling is correct and nothing can override that. So coming from like a very specific form of like Catholic background where like I know there's like, the Catholic folk practices, but like in her division of Catholicism, like anything outside of like the church and Bible was not like okay for her. So her kind of not wanting or like wanting to see that type of stuff happening, like the herbs burning, like she kind of felt very negative about it. Still kind of to this day. I would say my dad doesn't feel like that intensely, but there was definitely a time when, I felt like I was gonna get kicked out living with them. And I think it kind of happened during the pandemic when like, maybe you should go to like an online school, Lisa. Maybe you should be an online teacher for something to make money and not doing stuff like this. And but being the youngest in the family and like still having a sort of college background that like they suspected I could still run with. I don't think they wanted to act drastically with me, but I feel like over time, me just sticking to what I knew and what felt true, it eventually was the proof of like that I can move in this safely. And it started to lighten up a bit, but even to this day, like I tried to offer my mom Hilot. She's like, no, 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 don't do your rituals on me, And I'm just like, okay. But my dad, I feel like because her energy being right, like head energy, boss lady in the house, kind of calming down. I feel like he's showing his more of acceptance of it, because he had a grandfather that did this. So he's not really that surprised. And so nowadays it's kind of like, it's always like, "So you're gonna get a real job?" But, like, I think as I move forward and just, again, stay with what I'm doing and proving, I moved out already and stuff. I think eventually the real acceptance will come, but I think now they're just kind of, like, tolerating, like, "Oh, okay, she's not failing, so things are cool." And I just wanted to share that because I feel like for other people in diaspora, maybe they might be going through that and they're confused on how to navigate, but just staying rooted and knowing, like, whatever that thing is sparking in your spirit, like, please follow that, you know?
Wow. Orlando, how was your telling of your family experience?
Yeah, it's interesting. My mom, I mentioned this earlier about my mom's gonna hate me again, but like how she married down. I feel like we say that a lot. And the people that are not of her caliber believe in spirits, believe in anting, believe in the herbs and all these things, right? That are the poor people's medicine. And I'm like, no, we need to take out poor out of it and just be like, this is the people's medicine. Like, this is something that's helped us culturally be like before the Spaniards came, right? So I think for me, I'm gonna talk about it again. A lot about it's a lot about educating or re-educating and unlearning these things with my family. My mom particularly like really became accepting of it because I really was called through this medicine through grief, through death when my dad passed. I think that was a soft landing for my family to accept that. But just like with any other kind of magical practice, if there's any people here or that are listening that do other forms of magical practice, a lot of it is hush hush, like what Lisa said, yeah, I'm going to sneak this crystal in there, da da da. And it's like, okay, like, but did that person ask for that, But I think there's this type of element even when we're reintroducing Hilot to diaspora. It's like, okay, yes, I'm going to be praying, but am I going to be praying out loud? Probably not, right? But this person needs it. Am I going to be using this oil? Yes, of course I'm going to ask them if they have any allergies, da da da. But at the end of the day, am I going to use this protection oil because what they told me was that they needed energetic boundaries to set up? Yes, I will, right? Will I tell them? Yes, if they're open to that. If they're not, I won't, right? So I think there's that element of like an undercurrent that is also when my clients and my family um, have me explain what I do. So at the end of the day, they are accepting, but there's other things where I have to be a little bit more like to unlearn that colonial mind when it comes to um, the evil that was seen that what our ancestors did. If that makes sense.
Absolutely. And Kai, what about you? Your family responses?
I would say that it was a pretty like positive response, fortunately. My mom, she like was born in the Philippines but came here when she was like 10. And she hasn't been back to the Philippines since. And she's a nurse and like is really into like supplements and just like being healthy in general. So like when I decided to do anything with like agriculture or herbalism or Hilot, she's like always like chikaing like to her friends about it. So I think fortunately I had a positive response. And then my Lolo, who was still alive when I started doing Hilot, he was actually like really into it. I think like because he was also approaching his death, you know. I noticed this with a lot of Filipino elders. Sometimes some of them are really like uh stickler about their like kind of very strict Catholicism, but I think also because like Babaylan, even as a word, originates from our family's island, from Panay. And so this like mysticism has like even been like deeply embedded in the way Catholicism's practiced there. So I think he just like was totally fine with it. He was just like always like warning me about kulam and stuff, which is like, you know, like dark magic. And I think he's right. Like I don't think like now I'm thinking about it, like, oh yeah, like maybe that's why I don't do body work even, is because like I'm very sensitive to these energies that are often projected unintentionally or without the knowledge of the person even projecting the energy. So yeah, I would say a good response from family.
That was good advice. And speaking of advice, with your healing practices, who are some of your influences and inspiration? I feel like we've talked about a few of them on this call already, but anyone in particular that you guys want to give a shout out to that's really inspired you?
Who are some of my influences or inspirations? I I'm just trying to think, like, I think some of my, like, deepest teachers like, yes, come from the Philippines. They're actually, like, some of my indigenous teachers from America. So there's so many. But I would say, like, one of my deepest teachers is, an elder named Esperanza Martel. She's, like, an Afro-Taino elder from the Bronx, and she was a social worker, also like a shiatsu massage therapist, new energy work, herbalism, but her work was like firmly like whether it's like because she created a organization called Urban Atabek's Self Healing and Community Network. I think between her and Apu, like it really hammered home for me that like we are our own healer and that we're not just like healing like aimlessly, that like we're actually like healing whether regardless of what we call it, right, in the particular form that we're experiencing problems, is that we're healing from internalized and external oppression. And like a lot of the reason why we feel like getting diseases or like these different deeper rooted struggles is like a response to these conditions that we're all living through of oppression, whether that's like gender, economic, sexual, like, you know, so many different layers. And our bodies, our spirits are responding to this very real thing that's happening around us all the time and this violence. And so she taught me that like when we heal, like all of that positive energy, like we can take that to like rebuilding and like building new ways of relating and community on like a social level. And so I think for me, like some of my greatest inspirations and influences are like healers who have like done their own personal work of healing, like on body, mind, emotion, relational, but then like really ensuring that like that's happening within a community context and that they could even use healing as a means for community organizing and to mobilize people to really transform like the conditions that are causing them to feel unwell in the first place.
Wow. What about you, Orlando? Any influences or inspirations when it comes to your healing practice?
Yeah, definitely. I think, I mean, there's so much that we can talk about here, but I think I'm going to speak about it more from like an herbal lens. And I think Kai will know some of these teachers, but I'm also inspired deeply by Kai as well when it comes to herbal medicine, because for me, when we talked about it in the beginning about my relation to the land and it being detached, the teachers that I hold in high regard are the ones that help me, and I might get a little emotional, are the ones that help me reconnect to that, you know? And even though, yeah, I don't feel like I implement as much of that in my own practice, you know, there are people, like she's in the Bay Area. Her name is Angela Angel, and she's an herbalist, and she helped me through the grieving of my dad, and I think that that really helped me reconnect to, plant medicine in a way that was so healing. Another one is Jamie, who has Magpie Alchemy, who's also another herbalist, and she was the one, like, I'm gonna cry because when my dad was passing, she gave me books and all these things to just like dive in, you know, and to make my own medicine and reconnect, you know, ancestrally to plants. And I will never forget the amount of like heart that these teachers really poured into me personally, and how like even though I won't like teach about plants or anything like that, that's medicine that I carry in my own personal journey, you know. Um and I think last one would be Lynn Pacificar, who has Herbalaria, who was that kind of medium for me when my dad passed. I think all these elements circling back to Hilot being physical, herbal, and spiritual is coming back, you know. So yeah, that's something that I would like to amplify those people.
Very cool. Lisa, anyone on your side?
Yeah, so it's interesting because I feel like it's almost like obvious, like all my elders are teachers that I've worked with, but when I was sitting and listening, I'm getting emotional too. I would say like the auntie that I was talking about that had passed that created like this really deep experience in the dark night of the soul because it's like oh without her passing, like I feel like I just know her energy is working through me. And she was like the vessel for like the other elders that had this gift in my family. And I used to grieve over like her physical body leaving. I'm like, oh, I'm never gonna see her again. But like after working through things and moving with the educational things and the experiences that brought me here, I know she's always with me. And that itself is really inspirational in how I'm like moving in this and how I know that it's it's the physical and the things that we cannot see in energy, in the love, in the care that we put. And I always remember even when I think and I'm like missing her physical presence, I remember who she was and like her as a person. I was really young, but she was just so loving. She was the auntie that worked 3 jobs to put kids in the Philippines into college and school. No matter how tired she was and I was over her house, she would always hold space for me if I was going through family problems and always say, "Lisa, are you hungry? Do you want to eat?" And she knew that was the way to make me feel better. And I think even apart from like food that we eat, when I think and channel her in this work, I'm always moving in like, how can I feed this person or how can I hold space to allow them to remember what they need to eat? And again, I'm not talking about food, I'm talking about their spirit. And I feel like that's the biggest motivator, inspiration is just all of those things because I think that's what brings me peace. Even sometimes when I'm like, I need a little bit of a break, but if you know me and you know how I move, like I do go hard, but it's my capacity. And I know I'm put here to do this work. And what keeps me going is this universal connection I have with the people that are around me. And that's God, that's universe, that's source. And it's something we all have a connection to.
So, question for you guys. What we're all healers, we're all practitioners. What is it that you guys do individually to take care of yourself? What is your form of self keeping healthy for yourself?
Okay, I guess I'll start. Yeah, for me, it is really about the boundaries that I set for myself. You know, like in the mornings, prayer, things like that, and meditating, and putting those boundaries up, because like what Kai was mentioning, when we're doing this work, whether it be energetic or physical, I'm touching people a lot. So a lot of it is constantly cleansing, washing my hands spiritually as well as physically, setting up boundaries physically and energetically.
How about for you, Kai?
I would say my spiritual self-care has not been the best lately. New York is very spiritually unsanitary. But so I'll use the word I'll use, but I think what's been keeping me strong is like a very like in even when nothing else I can maintain. One is sleep, making sure that I'm sleeping and like keeping my circadian rhythm in tune with the earth as much as possible. And two is just like gratitude, like every day. Like if I can just like name 5 things that I'm grateful for every day, like I can keep myself moving forward.
I love that. Sleep, very important. Very important.
Very underrated for
So
sure.
underrated. I try to get my 7 to 8 hours every night. How about for you, Lisa?
I would say just nature. Like, I think the archetype I am, I need what's it called? Release through like sweat. Like I need sweat, but it feels really nice when I get to like go on a hike or like do like some rock climbing or something. So I feel like that's really powerful in releasing all the stuff that comes into play when you are like doing body work a lot and divination where you're like these messages and energies are intertwining.
Yeah, it's so great to get your insight on how you guys take care of yourself because I think as healers, as practitioners, often we're giving the advice and sometimes we forget to take care of ourselves and being able to refill our cup allows us to be that much more effective in working with our clients. So I love hearing the different kind of practices you guys do to take care of yourselves in that way. So now as we start to close, I mean, there's so much information that you guys have presented, and we wanted to go in deeper. But if people want to find out more information about you guys, where you guys are located, how they can work with you, what is your all's contact information? What's the best way to contact you guys? Contact you all.
So I'm primarily on Instagram, um, at Kita Consciousness, but I have my booking website linked there as well. And I'm located in Vallejo, California. I primarily serve just anywhere in the Bay because even if you're not there, I can do house calls. And I would just say my pricing right now is a little more high ticket, but from time to time I do barter and trade specials for community.
I love that answer. Little flexibility in the pricing. I love it. How about you, Orlando?
Yeah, for me, sorry, my brain's a little slow. What was the question again? Oh, where we could find us, right? I'm also on Instagram, like Lisa, on Balete Bodywork and Botanika. That's like the tree in the Philippines, the Balete tree. Um, and yeah, my website is also linked there as well. My prices you can see on my website. And I do workshops as well sometimes in person. Um, and I have multiple treatment rooms in San Diego right now. And I also work at an Ayurvedic clinic as well if people want that.
Outstanding. Kai?
So most of my work occurs virtually, because I work primarily with Tawas and food education. So yeah, you can find me on Instagram. I think these are gonna be like posted in the description, right? These like social media handles. Yeah, so I won't bother spelling it. But yeah, you can find me on Instagram. I have a website. And my rates are like pretty flexible. I mean, I have recommended sliding scales. But like I think one of the things that like really sits with me from the Philippines is yeah, this work is like sacred work. So if you need healing and I do require some kind of exchange, but how that looks can like we're all working with material energy, so there's a way. So I work with people as much as possible But my classes that I teach, I do charge like specific fees depending on the class, but there's always also scholarship or work trades available. So anyone can arrive.
And for all of you, is it mostly in person? Can people work with you online, virtually? What is, or is it preferred to be in person?
I can do both,
Uh,
whatever the client needs.
Yeah, same. Depends on the services. I could do both as well.
yeah, and I'm mainly virtual, but I think more of my in-person work I reserve for friends and family because it tends to involve body work and yeah.
Very cool. Well, thank you, Lisa, Kai, and Orlando. We are excited to witness your healing journeys as you continue offering rest, renewal, and ancestral connection to our communities worldwide. We're looking forward to staying connected in partnership and sharing your upcoming opportunities to our community. And to our community, we will be practicing what we preach and we'll be hibernating for the winter months for our own team's rest and restoration. So in the new year, we will continue this dialogue for part 2 of the Hilot series as we talk with Rev. Rolando G. Common, also known as Apu Adman, Master Trainer of Hilot Binabaylan and Program Director of the Hilot Academy of Binabaylan. So stay tuned as this episode titled Hilot Binabaylan will air in the new year on Wellness Wednesday, January 14th. Everybody, please stay tuned. That's going to be exciting. So as we close, we'd like to acknowledge once again our guest speakers, Liza Bustillo, Kai Delgado-Pfeifer, and Earlando Engkanto. Our creative lead, Richie, our video editor, Harmony Tangonangkwan, our social media strategist and development coordinator, Kathleen Torrio, and our outreach manager, Maya Custodio. We will also want to acknowledge our advisors, Alison De La Cruz, Rian De Los Reyes, and Safo Teologo. Our community partners, SoCal Filipinos, This Filipino American Life, Rising Filipinas, and Therapy Nai, and all of our community members for your shares and support. As always, you can find more about our guest offerings on our IG stories and our saved highlights, so you'll have permanent access to their upcoming events. Be sure to follow us at Filipinx Wellness on Instagram, Threads, Facebook, Apple Podcasts, and Spotify. Don't forget to like and subscribe to our Filipino and Wellness YouTube channel. Thank you, as always, for believing in us and for being part of this community. Be well, everyone. Continue to take care of yourselves and each other. Happy holidays. Maligayang Pasko at manigawang bagong taon.
Thank you, Dad.
Salamat,
Thank you,
everybody.
everyone.
Bye.
Salamat!
Thank you.
Hello, everyone. Magandang araw. This is Sheena Katz and Mark King, and we are the hosts of Filipinx Wellness, a podcast rooted in community, culture, and collective healing for the Filipinx community.
And today we are super excited to announce something we've been dreaming of for a while. We are launching our official Patreon.
This is your invitation to ride along with us. If our episodes have ever made you feel seen, witnessed, or naintindihan, then this is your space to be part of what keeps it going.
Your support on Patreon directly funds our ability to keep creating, covering production costs, bringing on more brilliant guests, and expanding what this community can be.
We've also created some very special offerings for our members, things like exclusive bonus contents, Filipino health and wellness products, invitations to live wellness events, digital resources, and more.
Whether you're joining for $1 a month or $20, know that every contribution fuels a movement, one where Filipino wellness is visible, centered, and celebrated.
So if you've been vibing with us, learning with us, and would like to see more, come join us on Patreon. Let's strengthen this movement together.
Maraming salamat.
Maraming salamat.